Here's the thing about interim coaches. You'll hear the media say this. They're bad hires. Well, I'm going to give you some interim coaches that were successful. You've heard of all these guys. Marty Schottenheimer in Cleveland. Marv Levy got to 4 Super Bowls in Buffalo. Art Shell. Jason Garrett won 3 division titles. Don Coryell. Jeff Fisher. Those guys' winning percentages are all better than Bill Parcells. Now, here's some interim coaches that did not work. It just did for whatever reason. Usually they didn't have a quarterback. Mike Singletary, Dick LeBeau, Romeo Crennel, Tom Cable was another one. It just didn't work. And there's some guys that were like, it wasn't great. It wasn't terrible. Jerry Glanville, Mike Tice, 500 in Minnesota. Wayne Fonts, by the way. Wayne Fonts got more crap because of the way it ended. He coached 120 games for the Lions. He won half. Wayne Fonts was pretty successful. More successful than the average coach. There is no, you know what all these numbers are? The same numbers as every other coordinator that gets a job. Some are going to be hits, some are going to be whiffs, and some are going to be okay. And when I looked this morning, you had more whiffs than great, but there were some great, and there was some average, and you did have more whiffs. But you also have more whiffs on all coaching hires. McVay is an outlier. Tom Coughlin from Boston College. Did anybody think he would get Jacksonville stabilized and then beat Belichick twice in Super Bowls? He wouldn't have without the right quarterback. So the bottom line is Rich Bisaccia has a quarterback. So he's going to win a bunch of games. If the players like him, he stabilized it, he won close, that will give him a much greater chance to be a winning coach. They really have nice weapons. I don't even think all their drafts were bad with Mayock. They just butchered the first-round picks and some of the second because Gruden, there's a lot of stories out there, a lot of belief that Gruden was sort of usurping Mayock's power and saying, draft this guy like Alex Leatherwood, who was never a first-round pick and did not have a good year.
That's not what your mom said.
So my guess is today, I'd probably give him the job. Thomas Dimitrov's the general manager, was on our show yesterday. He backed him. They got banged up at wide receiver. They got some other guys I like. They have a really good B to B plus running back. And, the division's tough, but they got to the playoffs this year. Denver still has a new owner coming. Denver doesn't have a quarterback. The Chargers haven't shown their ability to win close games over the last 5 or 6, 7, 10, 12 years. So everybody's playing for the wild card with Andy Reid and Mahomes. But I think today I'd probably hire Rich Bisaccia. I probably would. By the way, another thing to think about, Mark Davis is not one of the richer owners. He still may have to pay Gruden a lot, and Harbaugh's not cheap. So this may come down to I'd rather overpay for coordinators and get a reasonable deal on Rich, myself in the position of a GM. Well, they don't have a GM. So I put myself in the position of Mark Davis. There's 3 things that Rich has done. Rich Bisaccia. This was not your typical interim job. A coach got fired because of racist emails. Henry Ruggs killed a person off the team immediately, your vertical threat. They cut their first-round cornerback. It was a lot of chaos in a really good division. So he stabilized chaos, not losing. A lot of times the interim coach comes in because you're losing. Like chaos, stabilized it immediately. Not only won games, won overtime and close games, often on the road against teams like the Colts. Like really impressive situational football. And number 3 is Derek Carr and Maxx Crosby. They love him.
I still love you.
Start out with a few words here, and then we'll get into the questions. First of all, I'd like to thank certainly our players for their constant and consistent work and relentless effort to improve every day. That's all we really ask of them. They succeeded in that. Also, I'd like to thank the coaching staff for never blinking and for always putting the man first and then coaching the players second. Also, I'd love to give a shout out to Raider Nation for their loud and never-ending support for our team. They heard you, and they heard you, and you need to understand that. To have fans in Allegiant Stadium for the first time this season was an incredible experience. And in the future, I think this team will take great pride in playing at home and making an advantage to them. To play the Chargers with a blackout crowd was energizing for our players in that game, and I think it showed, again, all the way to the end. I'd like to finish by also thanking Mark Davis, Mike Mayock, and the entire Raider organization for their on-time support throughout the entire season. It was much appreciated. No one ever wavered. I believe it's a privilege to coach and play for the Las Vegas Raiders and in the National Football League.
Between Tampa and Los Angeles, it's like we've got all. I mean, two cities have glommed all the championships and players.